office to our new commissioners and to Mr. Vaughn, if he is. Yeah,
All
there he
right.
is. Okay.
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, in the era of Zoom, it's administered a little bit differently than we traditionally do it. Normally, I would lead the commission as a whole, those that are starting new terms. In this circumstance, what we're asked to do is for each of the three individuals to read the oath separately. And the three people that we have would be Commissioner Vaughn, who of course has served on HEDRA before, but beginning a new term. And then Commissioners Brox and Horsch, who are new to HEDRA, and we welcome them tonight. And we'll have them will administer the oath of office in that manner as well. So I think the first person I have on my list is Mark Vaughn. So Mark, if you have that oath of office in front of you, you can begin. Otherwise, I could share one of the oath of offices I have here on the screen.
Nope, I got it, John.
Okay.
I, Mark Vaughn, do affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America, the Constitution of the State of Minnesota, and the Charter and ordinances of the City of Hastings, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of a HEDRA Commissioner for the City of Hastings, counties of Dakota and Washington, and the State of Minnesota, according to the best of my ability and understanding.
Right. Thank you, Commissioner Vaughn. We'll move next to Commissioner Lori Brox. Lori, if you're ready to go.
Thank you, John. I, Lori Brox, do affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America, the Constitution of the State of Minnesota, and the Charter and ordinances of the City of Hastings, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of a HEDRA Commissioner for the City of Hastings, counties of Dakota and Washington, and State of Minnesota, according to the best of my ability and understanding.
Thank you, Commissioner Brox. And finally, Commissioner Peggy Horsch. Whoops, you're on mute, Peggy.
Good start for me. I, Margaret Horsch, do affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America, the Constitution of the State of Minnesota, and the Charter and ordinances of the City of Hastings, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of a HEDRA Commissioner for the City of Hastings, counties of Dakota and Washington, and State of Minnesota, according to the best of my ability and understanding.
All right. And thank you, Peggy. So that concludes the oath of office. Welcome all our new HEDRA commissioners here tonight. And I'll turn it back over to President Sullivan to continue with the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Hensman. Next, we have review and approval of the minutes this month, Thursday, December 10th. All had the opportunity to look those over, and if anyone has any additions or amendments, we would take those now, and I can call upon you. If not, then we can entertain a motion to approve the minutes as stated.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Vaughn. Is there a second?
Second it.
Mr. Goldberg. All those in favor, I'll call upon you. Mr. Piney?
Yes.
Mr. Sinclair?
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn?
Yes.
Okay, any objections? Okay. Thank you. I was not present, so I will abstain. And the minutes are approved. Mr. Hensman, we have the bills for you to review for us.
Thank you, Madam President. I have a number of bills here from December. Most of them, as you can see, are related to CARES Act expenditures, which were COVID relief funds from the federal government, payments for some of what we term our anchor grants for larger entities, nonprofit grants for smaller entities within the city. So those constituted a number of those expenditures. Also had some legal fees associated with that. And then I think our final payment for the downtown barricades and a couple of administrative items. So I can stand for any questions on the bills.
Are there any questions on the bills as presented? Okay, if not, a motion to approve the bills as stated by Mr. Hensman.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Sinclair. Thank you, Mr. Piney. All those in favor, I will begin by stating myself, aye. Mr. Piney,
Yes.
Ms. Brox,
Yes.
Mr. Sinclair,
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn,
Yes.
Mr. Goldblum,
Yes.
Ms. Horsch.
Yes.
Mr. Moss, are you voting? It's fine. It is approved. Thank you very much. Okay, next, the first order of business is election appointment of officers.
Yeah.
And the slate moving forward.
Yep. Thank you, Madam President. Just a reminder with the election of officers, what we're looking for tonight would be the appointment of the president, vice president, and treasurer. And those are to be elected from the citizen commissioners of HEDRA, not the two city council representatives. We're looking to appoint Eric Moss as our secretary, Chris Idemiller, our finance manager, as assistant treasurer, and designate Dan Flegel, our city attorney, and Andrea McDowell-Paler as our legal counsel. So we have some recommendations for you, other fill in the blanks that we ask for your recommendations, motion and second on. Most importantly for the president, vice president, treasurer positions. So this can be done as a slate or can be done individually. So I will leave that up to the discussion of HEDRA and any motions to follow. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call upon anyone as far as recommendations here at this point or discussion.
If we want to follow the traditional slate, as been done in the past, I would support that.
I agree. I agree.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vaughn. I think, any other comments on that?
Just for clarification, with Commissioners Piney and Vaughn, what we've done traditionally have been to rotate positions. Precedents would be that the vice president, which is Mr. Piney, would be president this year. The treasurer position is open right now. That was served by Jen Fox, so we do not have anyone presently in that position. And so following on tradition, we would be able to have Mr. Piney serve as the president, but the vice president and treasurer positions would still be open.
So we will, go ahead, Mr. Vaughn.
I'll make a motion then that the president is Mr. Piney, vice president is Bruce Goldblum, and secretary would be Scott Sinclair.
And secretary is who, Mark?
Scott Sinclair.
Got it. Thank you.
Just a point of reference, did you mean treasurer? The secretary's assigned, correct?
Secretary Treasurer.
Yeah.
Okay, so that would be for the treasurer. Okay, thank you.
Okay, gentlemen, do you accept those nominations? Let's hear from Mr. Piney.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Goldblum,
Yes.
Mr. Sinclair.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll take the vote as a slate. All those in favor, say aye. I'll begin and I will say yes to all those nominations and approve them. Mr. Piney,
Yes.
Ms. Brox,
Yes.
Ms. Horsch,
Yes.
Mr. Goldblum,
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn,
Yes.
Mr. Sinclair.
Yes.
Very much. So I will hand over the meeting to Mr. Piney as we have done traditionally, if you would like. I'd be happy to handle the rest of the meeting, but I'll hand over the imaginary gavel to you at this time.
Oh, the wait is immense. Thank you.
And thank you, President Sullivan, for your service.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Martha. Thank you very much, everybody. This means a great deal to me to be able to finish out my final year here on HEDRA in this role. I look forward to having a really good, positive year. I think we have great things to look forward to, and I'm hoping that HEDRA will be a major force in that. So thank you again. All right. Back to business. We are on to item B, which is resolution number 2021-01, the authorization of banking signatories.
Okay, thank you, President Piney. And this is a standard item we have at the beginning of the year, making official for banking purposes the HEDRA president, treasurer, and assistant treasurer. So in the resolution you have, we will fill in the blanks per the election of officers that was just made.
Good. All right, thank you, John. All right, then, that will move us on to item number C, is that correct?
And then, Mr. President, looking for a motion and second for adoption of that resolution, please.
Yes.
I'll
All right,
also move.
Thank you. Martha, is there a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. All right, I will go around the Brady Bunch board here. We will start with Martha.
Aye.
Thank you. Scott,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Bruce,
Yes.
Peggy,
Yes.
and I will also vote yes. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. All right, we have item C on our business this evening, which is to adopt resolution 2021-02, approving continued HEDRA loan payment deferral through December 31st, 2021 in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. John, do you have any comments you'd like to make on this or fill us in?
Sure, Mr. President. This is a continuation of the policy that we established last year in the wake of COVID. I think in the staff report here, we noted that there's been a savings of about $40,000 in payments. I think there's about 12 loans that are out there. What we're proposing is that this this deferral continue on through the year 2021 till December of this year. Right now, it expired at the end of 2020. So I can stand for any comments or questions. We are looking for a motion and adoption of this if you are so inclined. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions?
I have
Yeah, Bruce.
John, have you had any of the borrowers ask questions about this, and what kind of feedback have you had from the deferrals?
Yeah, Commissioner, we haven't had much discussion or questions from the loan holders at this point, the payees. So I don't have too much more to follow up on that one.
Okay, so we just want to extend it for another year because we feel that that's the right thing to do. Okay.
All right, do we have any additional questions or comments for John? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion tonight.
I'll move.
All right, Commissioner Sullivan, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Horsch. All right, we will take a vote on this. All those in favor of this adoption of resolution 2021-02, Commissioner Sullivan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sinclair,
Yes.
Commissioner Vaughn,
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks,
Yes.
Commissioner Goblish,
Yes.
Commissioner Horsch,
Yes.
and I will also vote yes. We have unanimous vote. Thank you, everyone. All right, moving right along, we have the approval of the downtown property study. Very amazing document. John, does anyone on staff have any additional information you want to present tonight? Anything that's changed or been updated?
Sure, I can start out with that, Mr. President. I want to give a big thanks to Eric Moss for helping to put this together, and for Rusty Fifield for doing a lot of the background work when he was here. So We had looked at this document at the last meeting. There has not been any changes since the document in December. The basis of the document was to look at the properties that we own within the downtown area and examine how those could be developed. And Eric, I'm not sure if you have anything more to add to that.
That was a great summary.
All right, without any additional comments from staff, does anyone on the commission have any questions or comments regarding this document? Yes, Mark.
Biggest concern on the study is how much bandwidth do we have as staff to take on this much so fast? I know we got it laid out in the different quarters here. Do we see us bringing in any consultants to help complete this? Or if we don't get to it, we're just going to kind of push it to the next year or just keep plugging away? It's an aggressive study and I think I like it, but I'm just also concerned. It's a lot of it's based on the market too. If the market doesn't, then it's just a piece of paper that's not agreeing with it. So mostly concerned, does staff have the bandwidth to move along with this?
John, Eric, do you have any comments? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, you bet. Great question. Certainly the timeline laid out in the implementation chapter is a bit aggressive, admittedly, but a goal that we think as staff that is something that we can take on, and that, you know, if it stretches a bit, that may happen, but if we don't put the goal out there, we won't get there. And so much has to do with those initial conversations with partners, be it Met Council, local landowners, and the sooner we get those conversations rolling, the sooner we may end up into a project. And so I think it's important to keep those conversations on the front end so that we are starting those conversations now. You make a good point that in the end, the market will dictate when in fact a project occurs. Certainly this group has the ability through some financing tools to help fill gaps where the market may not be able to fill itself, to help speed things along. But yes, we are very much at the mercy of the market to eventually make projects happen. But we do think that at a staff level, we can pursue these projects.
In a follow-up, Chair.
Yes.
Thank you for that, Eric. And I would suggest then as HEDRA, and we don't need to do it today, but I've seen on my tour here of as a council and in commission before this, sometimes we have a plan and we just kind of keep limping along, or we don't really have an end date on it and needs to be refreshed. I recommend that we as HEDRA then use this document to do it ourselves. In 12 months, we come back together as a group and say, all right, now let's us set the next dates and expectations that we think we can do, and be realistic about it too. I don't want somebody saying, oh, we got a plan. Well, it might need to be refreshed. I think that's our role as commissioners, to make sure that we refresh it and give staff some directions. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Vaughn. I really appreciate your excitement with this. That's great. Does anyone else have any comments? All right, at this point, I just have a question for staff. This document, how is this accessible by the public right now?
Currently, it's not on the city's website. Is accessible to the public through the packet for HEDRA. If adopted by HEDRA this evening, we would make it available on the city's website, just as other planning documents are available, such as the city's comprehensive plan.
Okay. Yeah, I really like that. I think that this is something that's important to really get out there. I really feel that a role of HEDRA is to, first of all, educate people on what our acronym actually stands for, but hopefully on what we actually do. I think that this document would really be a great tool to get out there and be a conversation starter. So I'd really encourage everybody to let folks know that this is in the hopper, and that ideally we'll be voting on it shortly for approval, but this is real. And like Commissioner Vaughn had stated, Let's take this seriously. Let's make something happen. Let's have a good year, everyone. So on that note, are there any additional comments or questions? All right, seeing
This
none.
is Commissioner Horst.
Yes?
Could
Yes,
I,
Commissioner Horst.
being new to the process, is this considered a living and breathing document, or is it something that is more permanent, that we're really going to continue to say that this is the document we refer to? Or I just think about this in terms of the next year, I think is going to inform us on a lot of things as the pandemic wraps up and we understand more about what some of the changes in the world are going to be because of that. So I'm just curious on, what are we looking for with this document? Is it something that will change with time, or is it a blueprint?
Eric, would you like to address that?
Sure, thank you, Mr. President. Commissioner Horsch, while it would be adopted tonight, in its form for it to be revised, it would take additional action, I believe, from HEDRA to revise that document. However, to Mr. Commissioner Vaughn's comments earlier, very much so this is something that HEDRA could revisit at a later time, should market conditions change, or should conditions with some of the property owned by HEDRA change. It's certainly something that could be revisited at a later date.
Does that answer your question, Commissioner Horsch?
It does, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and I'll remind you, new members, please feel free to interrupt at any time just for a little refresher. Don't worry about it at all. This is a lot to take in, I'm sure. So, all right. Without any additional comments or questions, I think we are ready to entertain a motion.
I would move to accept the study and
Thank you, Commissioner Sinclair. Is there a second?
Second it.
I thank you, Commissioner Goblerz. All right, we are ready for a vote. Martha, I will start with you.
Yes.
Commissioner Sinclair,
yes.
Commissioner Vaughn,
Yes.
Commissioner Brox,
Yes.
Commissioner Goblerz,
Yes.
Commissioner Horsch,
Yes.
and I will vote yes as well. We have a unanimous acceptance. Thank you, everyone. I think this is big. This will be fun to work with. All right, we are now on to item E on our agenda tonight, which is to authorize the funding for parklets. John or Eric, are either of you going to take this one up for us?
Well, I'm going to turn this one over to Eric Moss. He's been doing a lot of research and background information on this, so I will leave it to you, Eric.
Commissioners, Mr. President, the parklets have been a big topic point for the business community, looking forward ahead already to spring and the summer months. In response to that, staff has put together a survey for parklets specifically. That went out to all downtown area businesses. We were thankful we got 22 responses to that survey. I've provided a summary for the pros and the cons in your packet. But in terms of some of the cons or the negatives that were noted pretty consistently were some concerns with the closure of 2nd Street on the weekends, the overall aesthetic of the parklets themselves, and then the pedestrians in the roadway. Some of the positives, and there were many, was the ability for additional seating, the ability for proper social distancing to occur while still being able to patronize our local bars and restaurants and brewery. And even the respondents that had some concerns with it were still largely supportive of the concept. I just thought that perhaps in year 2 could be improved a bit upon. Certainly last year, it was a very responsive reactionary, I should say, to everything that was going on. Whereas this year, we're in the fortunate spot to be able to plan ahead. And so that's what we're trying to do with these winter months. Do want to share with you all some examples of parklets that we've been considering and looking into. The ones last year that were deployed into the city were very much put together last minute. As I mentioned, it was short timing, but they certainly are things that they can be very much amenities to a downtown setting. Here you see one where it does work with angular parking. This one actually extends into the sidewalk. It's not a requirement, but again, just found a picture online to give you an idea of kind of what these can look like. Here you see an example where it simply does just butt up to the edge of the curb line. It's important that does not become a trip hazard, but essentially taking back some parking space for the purposes of outdoor seating. And so with that, staff has been working really across all departments on what this might look like in 2021 if funding was available and if ultimately City Council authorized the use. With that, there is basically an ask in there from staff level to see what HEDRA's appetite is for providing funding for the construction of these parklets. At this point, it's staff's opinion that the city would not own, operate, maintain, or store these parklets. If they were put into place, they would be entirely the responsibility of the business owners. However, HEDRA is in a place where they could help financially if they chose to do so. So with that, John and I put our heads together, came up with that figure of $40,000 to start with. For those that weren't on HEDRA last year, HEDRA allocated $25,000 to be spent on the parklets last year, much of that going towards the jersey barriers, the signage, and the metal railings that made up the barriers for the parklets last year. So broad overview, we continue to look at this, but we're looking to HEDRA to see what your appetite might be in supporting parklets in 2021. With that, I'll stand for questions.
And commissioners, just to follow up quickly on Mr. Moss's comments. So the action we're looking for you tonight is to consider the authorization of $40,000 towards a grant program for the construction of parklets. As Eric had pointed out, this would be a grant that would facilitate the construction, ownership. Our responsibilities beyond the grants would not be there. We would also be looking at adopting some ordinance provisions as well through the city council to offer some further regulation standards to these. But looking tonight to you for two things: one, any comments you have on the parklets, and two, the specific action of considering the allocation of up to $40,000 toward this program. Now, the program itself is something that we are under development with at this time. We anticipate that there would be a maximum amount that would be allocated for the construction of individual parklets. So Eric and I can stand for any questions.
All right, any questions for Eric or John? Martha?
I don't have a question, so I'll refrain from comment until questions are completed. I just have a comment when we're ready.
Yes, Lori.
I'm just going to restate what I understand to make sure I'm correct. Is the amount of money that we would give in a grant, so we wouldn't require any specific design or any specific type of parklet. It's just that we would provide funding for a business to construct a parklet according to the design and the orientation and everything that they choose. So we could theoretically end up with a certain number of, let's say, 5 parklets, and they could be the same or they could all be different. Is that right?
Piney, Commissioner Brox, not quite. So the intent of staff at this point would be that if authorized, we would put together guidelines. There would be an ordinance that would dictate things like location, spacing, setbacks from the traveled right away, things like that. So there would be parameters that the business owners would have to adhere by, largely around safety. But then, yes, they would be then free to design as they will, as long as it met building code and the city's ordinances.
I'd like to make a comment or suggestion on that. I mean, that sounds pretty scary. I know that people run wild with whatever down there, but this could actually be a great deal of fun. Do we have an architecture or design program at the high school that this could maybe be taken up just as a curiosity for them, just have them run it through as a project and see what they come up with? Is this something that HPAC may be interested in? Can we put this in front of some sculptors or woodworkers, perhaps? Maybe we have some fun with a little bit of individuality down there, rather than, just try and make one size fits all kind of work. That would just be a comment or suggestion that I might make to that end. Does anyone have any additional questions or comments? Mark.
Thank you, Chair. I got a few quick questions here for staff. I'm reading in the memo here. We talk about, we're using the word COVID again, COVID relief, but I just want to verify this is dollars that is in our budget, correct? This isn't CARES dollars. CARES is not used in this conversation. Second one would be, is this just staff's recommendation for just downtown businesses, or any business in the community would be eligible? And I know we got a lot of work to do towards that. Could any community, any business in the community look at this? And then the last one is, have we looked at, I see the word grant, but I'm personally leaning more towards a loan, like that's what HEDRA does. Very rarely do we give out grants without some return on investment or a partial payment, or, a partnership of some sort. I know we got a lot of work to go, and I get what staff's looking for some direction. I'm not opposed to it, but I also know that as a city council member, $40,000 could go a long ways in this community base too. And I just want to make sure that we're not just saying, here's some money, go over here and give grants. I want to make sure that we do our due diligence. Of $40,000 could go to a great amenity in a park that we're working on that we don't have enough funding for. I just want to make sure we're using HEDRA dollars correctly for the entire community.
Thank you, Commissioner Vaughn. Commissioner Sullivan, I see you have a comment or question as well.
Yes, thank you. And I'll just initially follow up Mr. Vaughn's comment or question on that. Having been part of the hospitality industry, the restaurant world has been hit particularly hard. A couple of businesses may not even reopen, friends of ours that own these places. So having a grant for people to have additional space and potentially more income or save their business, I think is very important rather than a loan, because I think most of these places don't have the money to even obtain that. The positives, I think, even though it's kind of spelled out here with some negatives, I think far outweigh the negatives, in that the aesthetic is really wonderful for downtown. The look last year was great. We had a lot of people outside, and we had additional folks participating in outdoors, kind of just at least being able to see each other outdoors. But with this, I think it provides more safety and just a much cleaner aesthetic for people downtown. With the barriers that we had last summer, it was just a little awkward and just not very pretty, frankly. But these are gorgeous, and you can have planters and things that we can use year after year, that with the kind of lifestyle that people have down at the river, I think it's just very fitting for us. And those restaurants that are, or businesses, but probably restaurants, because this is outdoor seating, that's going to be the attraction that people are looking for to sit down and eat and rest. I'm all on board with it. And I was last year too. I'm just kind of reiterating what I said last year at this point, but I think it's well worth the money.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. Does anyone else have any comments or questions?
And President Pine, maybe Eric and I might be able to follow up on Mark's questions earlier related to the parklets. I know from the CARES aspect, no, these would not be CARES funds that would be used. These would be funds that were allocated in the 2020 HEDRA budget towards COVID relief that we did not spend in 2020. And Eric, I'm not sure if you want to jump in on a couple of the other questions.
You bet. Thank you. President Piney, Commissioner Vaughn, with respect to the question of where, any business within the city would be eligible to apply for this. The intent is that it would be an ordinance update. Any business inside the city is certainly able and willing, if willing to use that option, they could apply. And so it would not be restricted to the downtown. And then with respect to whether it be a loan or a grant, certainly looking for feedback from HEDRA on that. However, in conversations with Mr. Hinsman, when talking about the administrative costs, including staff time and administering small dollar loans compared to some of the loans that HEDRA gives out, there is something to be considered there in terms of the return on investment in trying to recoup a few $1,000s perhaps.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Yes, Scott.
Just a couple observations and which will lead to a question. We received a similar presentation last year leading up to some intervention. I don't know. I can't remember, frankly. It was our HEDRA action that did $2 for last summer's version of these. But John, we had a presentation concept and some examples and ultimately when you could refresh memories as to what our action was or our contribution was to that. I can't remember exactly.
Sure, Commissioner Sinclair. It was one of these items that came forward very quickly last year, and I think it was probably about May or so. The concept was brought forward for parklets as what Eric had shown earlier tonight. The reality of what happened was a little bit different, as you saw in the downtown area. We had grappled last year with this, with having the parklets being connected to the building in looking at the liquor license law. Looking at that this year, looking at what other communities have done, we are going to move forward with having parklets designed like the pictures you see tonight, which is essentially having that sidewalk free along 2nd Street, so you would not have a situation in which pedestrians would come up to a parklet, have to go off the sidewalk, into the street, around and back up again. And that was a bit tortuous, I think. From a visual standpoint, not so great with the barricades. We're looking at something that would function and look a lot better this year. What we allocated last year was $25,000 towards those barricades last year.
Okay. And you just answered my question then, which is to a certain degree, at least, how do we avoid the letdown of the pretty picture with what was actually built out there, which I don't think anyone would argue was aesthetically pleasing, and it might have been functional. And of course, that's an important aspect of this. It did accomplish the intent of providing some much needed outdoor seating, I think, to allow people to have at least a meaningful capacity to run their businesses. But it was something short of the pretty pictures that we were all shown. So it sounds like the intent is that there's going to be some criteria for the construction and the aesthetic of these. I'm just curious, how is that going to be administered? I mean, one could argue that what we saw last summer was perfect and perfectly aesthetically pleasing, and to somebody else, that was an eyesore. So how would we administer this in any kind of design criteria? Who's gonna have the final say in yes, that passes, or no, that doesn't fit the bill?
Sure, Commissioner Sinclair. Yeah, last year I characterized as a duct tape solution. It was something that we did very quickly and very brutally to allow for space outside. We're in a good position this year to be able to thoughtfully plan this and to have a much better result. And Eric's been taking the lead on that. And Eric, I'm not sure if there's more that you want to share on some of the activities that you're doing.
Eric,
Staff level.
There you go.
Thank you. At a staff level, community development has been collaborating with the building department as well as engineering, coming up with guidelines, not only for aesthetics, but also for safety. And so from a staff level, we feel confident that we can put parameters in place that would require permit review, ultimately probably something from city council for review, that would make sure that we're hitting the mark here from both an aesthetic as well point.
Okay, great. My last question is, it did appear that there were some that were built last summer that really never got used. Would we have something in place to ensure that people receiving funding, actually did it? I know, is this going to be a get the money, then build it? Or is it going to be build it and get reimbursed? Or is that a consideration even? It just seems like some money was expended last summer and it wasn't the most fruitful, at least in terms of what just my own observations of being in downtown every day.
Eric or John, do you have any comments regarding that?
Yeah, when we took a look at what happened last year on it, I mean, it wasn't the best situation as far as from an aesthetic standpoint. When you take a look at the grant program itself, we're still developing the parameters of it, but it's a good point, whether we give the money and wait to see what happens, or whether there is some sort of reimbursement for activities that have been completed. I do agree that there was a couple of them last year in which the parklets were not used. So we would want to be able to ensure on any grant funds that we allocate out that something is constructed and used.
All right, everybody. Are there any additional comments or questions regarding this tonight?
One other thing I'd like to make noted is that because we are setting it up as an ordinance amendment, this is something that would be then available for businesses to apply to year after year. And so the intent here is something that if they were to construct these, that yes, they would store them over the winter, but that they could pull them out of storage in the spring and use them again and again. And so the hope and the intent is that you see some year over year return on that investment rather than just a one-time expenditure for a temporary parklet.
Yes, Mark.
A question for staff. Thank you, Chair. Have we looked at where we build them, we rent them? Because then we hold the standard, or someone holds the standard of, because 4 years, 5 years down the road, they may start to deteriorate. And then I know we have a lot of work in the ordinances to come back and say, hey, you might have to fix that up a little bit. Well, it was a grant, so they're now have to find the funding to do that. I just wonder if it's even a more labor staff. And this is why I have questions about a staffing level too, of what our bandwidth is also. Is it something that gets put up for a weekend and gets taken down? I know these are clumsy, they're big, they're not made for that. It might be up all summer if somebody checks it out for the summer, kind of like what we do with our party wagon with the Parks Department. Those are things that I would rather have us have discussions on before we just say, yes, we approve funding for this. I want to know what I'm approving funding for versus just saying, here's a blank check and then keep working hard at it. I think we're a little backwards on the policy side of it. I'm in favor of moving forward. I just want to know what we're going to go into for the money or how we're going to do it. My 2 cents. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Bond. Right, does anybody else have anything they want to add with us tonight?
I could just make a comment quick. John and Eric, how many of these will this fund? So 40,000, do we have an idea of how much they cost for each one of them? And then the second question would be, is it something that, maybe they should get a permit or apply for this on an annual basis so that you can monitor whether did they use it correctly for the previous year? Maybe we don't want a certain business to use it again this second year if it's not being used right, so, or maintained correctly.
Yeah, make a very good point. And yes, I would see this being something that would require an annual permit before deploying it. Something that could also include an inspection. The point that was made earlier, is it being maintained? Are there things that need to be fixed on it before it's deployed into the public right of way and ultimately has members of the public utilizing it? Certainly something that could be looked into. John, did you have a comment or thought on the other question?
Yeah, as far as how many that this would would fund, as far as the number, it could be 5 to 10, I would imagine.
I seem to concur with that. I did do a little bit of research, and they've got some kits out there where you can spend $1,000. There's one vendor I looked into. One, if you get it completely tricked out, it's $25,000. Certainly I don't think you need the Cadillac of it, but something that I think like the example you showed tonight, a few $1,000s, I would think would get that done.
All right, thank you, Eric and John. Hey, you have a question?
Yes, if I'm a restaurant owner and I don't want to put a parklet in, but I still want to put a couple tables and an umbrella and a little barrier around there next year, can I still do that? Or are we saying, you got a parklet or you don't have anything?
No, good question, Commissioner Horsch. Yeah, we've got 2 separate licenses that we would have. We have a sidewalk cafe license, which is essentially if you put a table out on the sidewalk, and that would be completely separate from this, and someone could still apply and do that. With the parklet, we're looking at that as an ordinance amendment to allow for its use on there. Some of the standards we would have would be similar, I think, to the sidewalk cafe, but they would be 2 separate things that people could do one or both of those.
All right, thank you, John. One comment or question that I have is you had mentioned you've already thought about kind of staffing time in dealing with this as opposed to a grant versus a loan. Has any of this been run by the code enforcement folks? I mean, what is their appetite for wanting to kind of have to stay on top of these things? That might help direct you in coming up with what sort of standards are going to be, who's responsible for making those decisions and so forth, just so that, this doesn't become a burden for, one of our departments that really doesn't need it. Just really try and make this straightforward and positive and simple and, good for everybody involved.
Yeah, that's a good question, President Piney. We've had our building official at the table here through the development of this, looking at it not only from a building inspection standpoint, structural standpoint, but also looking at it from a code enforcement standpoint as well. I don't think that there's going to be a lot of administration involved in this. I see an initial permit being issued, some follow-up on that to ensure that it's constructed correctly, and the follow-up beyond its construction to be minimal.
All right, thank you. It sounds like we just had to figure out how to make sure they're pretty now. All right, does anyone have any additional questions or comments tonight? All right, are we looking for a vote on this here then, John?
Yes, Mr. President. I know there's been some good discussion tonight, and that's helpful for us. The action that we would like you to consider would be the allocation of funding towards the grant program itself. If you're comfortable in making that motion or any amendments to that motion, we would take those at this time. If it's a situation in which you'd like to see more information prior to doing that, certainly respect that, but looking for some direction on it. When we're looking at the regulations themselves pertaining to the parklets, we would put those in ordinance form, take those forward to the city council for their review and approval for the ordinance and also for the licensing end of it on that one. So that's how that would follow through in the future.
Okay. All right, based on that assessment from city staff, does anyone on the commission want to make a motion?
I'll move
Martha.
that we that we allocate 40,000 towards this program, given the fact that it will be implemented with guidance and through ordinance.
All right, thank you. Do we have a second tonight?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Gorbush, thank you for your second. All right, I think we are ready for a vote. You've moved around on the boxes here on my screen a bit, so bear with me. Commissioner Horsch,
Yes.
Commissioner Gorbush,
Yes.
Commissioner Sullivan,
Yes.
Commissioner Brox, Commissioner Sinclair.
I'm going to vote no with the clarification that's based on, I think it's preemptive, and I'd like to see a broader swath of applicable or people that could apply, as opposed to just throwing money at a very specific program. So no.
All right, thank you for your candor. Commissioner Vaughn.
Commissioner Sinclair, I would have made that comment in the comment portion. It just appreciate the concept, appreciate the idea, and support it, but I don't like the process that we're going through, so I vote no.
Well, at this point, I'm going to vote no as well. I guess I would have some concerns about the aesthetics at this point. I would just like to know that we have something agreed upon before we allocate the funds, I guess. So that would be my concern. So where does that bring us with our tally then here?
Our tally, Mr. President, would be the ayes would be 4, the nays would be 3, so the motion does pass. However, we recognize and appreciate the concerns of the commissioners tonight on how this will all function. And we will continue to provide updates to the commission as this moves forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you, commissioners, for your conversation, and thank you both, John and Eric. I know that you both put a lot of time into this, and I have no doubt that you'll continue to do so and get this wrapped up for us. I think it's a great idea, but I think we just have some concerns about, you know, what the parameters for this might end up being. So it sounds like you've taken the notes, and I look forward to what you come up with. Thank you very much. All right. All right, we are now on to item F on our business agenda tonight. Discuss the preliminary land credit sale of custom asphalt. And Eric or John, I'm assuming one of you will be heading that up for us tonight.
Yeah, President Piney, I'll take this one away.
Thank you.
You bet. So before HEDRA this evening, staff is looking for feedback as it relates to potential lot sale. Custom Asphalt, a local Hastings business, is looking to relocate. They have sold their existing location and now are looking to find a new spot. They contacted staff about opportunities in the industrial park, and we've been working with them for a little over the last month on trying to identify a spot that would work for them. In conversations with the company, they've indicated desire to potentially expand their project into some additional spec space. However, the timeline for that portion of the development is unclear. Working with that business owner, we dialed in on 3 lots within the industrial park, roughly located adjacent to Minnesota Coaches between Commerce Drive and 31st Street. I'll go ahead and share my screen here. And so in working with the landowner, they originally were looking for about 1 acre in land. Lot 6 is almost exactly that 1 acre, with lots 4 and 5 being about 1.3 acres. They initially expressed interest in lot 5 and generally interest in 31st Street due to its direct access out to Highway 61. However, because there's not an imminent plan for what that second phase of development would be, staff has some concerns with selling lot 5 first, because then it would leave HEDRA ultimately with two separate parcels, lots 4 and 6. Whereas if lots 4 or 6 were the first one to be sold, then it would leave HEDRA with a little bit more flexibility going forward to service potential larger businesses in the future that need more than 1 acre. It wouldn't, however, preclude Custom Asphalt from still doing an expansion in the future, being if they're in 6, they could expand to 5, or again, 4 into 5. However, before staff went any further with this business, we did want to get feedback from HEDRA if you're in agreement with trying to push. Same for questions.
All right, thank you, Eric. Does anyone have any questions or comments at this point?
I guess I think staff is correct in trying to not sell lot 5 first. I think it makes more sense to keep that for future expansion of a larger business if possible. So I would agree either 4 or 6 would be a better way to go at this point, unless he has a more detailed plan of what he's going to do for his future expansion.
All right, thank you. Are there any additional questions?
Chair, I could add also for the HEDRA Commission to consider what a desired timeline would be for that second phase to occur if they were to pursue 2 lots.
Chair, I just want to confirm, I support Commissioner Grubush on lot 6, I think is the most, seems like the right lot to just start with at least. I know these are just visuals from the top, but have we had conversation with that present business owner? Is lot 6, looks like we're coming into their building in space, or are they encroaching on lot 6 a little bit themselves?
Yes, Commissioner Vaughn, staff has not yet approached that business owner to the north. There is certainly probably some skew to the aerial, but yes, staff does believe that the business owner to the north is likely encroaching on to HEDRA property, and that would need to be taken care of if we were to sell it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Eric. Does anyone have any comments or questions regarding conversation with this potential motion?
In President Pani, I will note that we do have Jerry Groach on with Custom Asphalt in the audience, okay. And I see that Jerry has raised his hand there. So if you want to hear from Jerry, we could bring him into the meeting as well.
Absolutely, please do.
Okay, will do. Jerry, I think you're in the meeting now. If you can unmute, you will be set.
Okay, should be good here, I think.
Okay.
Thank you, Jerry.
Yes. I kind of disagree because being a business owner in the industrial park, I developed 3 acres already and did a nice job and over the last 22 years. But to take and put me on the smallest or the furthest back lot, I don't think that's fair to me as a buyer. If you're going to not sell them that way, then maybe you might want to rethink how you're trying to sell them, because you're showing me, and I spent a lot of time already, that you have 3 lots available. If it's really 2, you should make it 2. I did a nice job on the other 3 acres that I had over the years. I appreciate the industrial park very much. Some of the things that have been going on up here are well, I'll just say my buildings, there's 3 buildings that I plan on putting up over the next maybe 5 years. And my previous facility was paying $25,000 a year in property tax alone to the city of Hastings. So you're kind of looking at, there's within 10 miles, there's other industrial parks that are considerably less to purchase per acre. I would ready to buy tomorrow. My other facility has been sold, and I would be starting building as soon as the frost is out this year. So what that's all worth.
Hey, Jerry, can you speak to the pros and cons? You mentioned lot 6 is smaller, and I'm assuming that to it being too small for what you envision. Looking at, again, a diagrammatic overlay on an aerial photograph, which can be a little deceiving, but
Sure.
can you just talk to the merits of lot 4 versus lot 5 for us? So we can compare at least a size that's similar.
I need all the space that I can get. So the acre versus acre and a third is considerably different in what we're looking at. It is also uphill. It's nicer when you build multiple buildings to be able to start on top of the hill and work your way down. For drainage, we don't have too many storm sewers in the industrial park. So if there was ever heavy torrential rains, which has happened at our other facility, when they made some changes, all of a sudden we're getting the water down below. I'd like to just avoid that problem with purchasing ahead of it and building up the top hill and then the middle of the hill and then the bottom of the hill. So.
Okay, that's helpful. And then in terms of your future vision, is there a sensible progression? And again, I think we need more information to even discern this, but just while we've got you on the phone, what would be the logical growth for you then if you were started in lot 5? Would it be to go to 6 or would it be to go to 4?
To 6.
Okay.
And between 5 and 6, there would be 3 buildings. And the second building would need to be on the property line of 5 and 6. Is that right? Yes. Of 5 and 6.
Would that entail some kind of replatting to convert that to a single lot then, or
Yes, we did that here, and we kept them divided, but we shared the driveway, and I guess the buildings weren't divided, but it's worked out good that way as we did. When I say here, I'm at my office right now on Commerce Drive. This is a block away from the land that you're looking at on 31st Street.
And Jerry, can I ask why 3 separate buildings instead of a larger building?
Oh, I just think the runoff and a little bit of space between neighbors, as whoever, more of a condo system than it is a one building.
Sure. Because we've seen situations before in the industrial park where people have built a larger building and condoed it out or leased out different portions of it and accomplished the same thing. Because there's certainly some inefficiencies when you have separate buildings on that. And there may be more efficiencies from a construction standpoint if you had a larger one.
I wouldn't want to take that big a jump right off the bat. I have a lot of interested people who would like to work with me on this project and be condo owners. But to take that big a jump is, each building is about 100 by 50, a little bit less than that. So that's what, 5,000, a little under 5,000 square feet, I think. Yeah, 100 by 50 would be 5,000 square feet for each building, so.
Fundamentally, you want to relocate your business and then do some land development, real estate development to basically add a approximate but not related business, basically.
Yeah, the first building I would move my business into and be the resident, the sole resident. The second and third building would be condos for, could be any things.
And these would be similar to the units that are just around the corner. I forget.
Yep, but they're a little bit to the north of me, and they have 37 units in there. They're smaller. Cottage Grove did another one just this past year off of Highway 61.
Yeah,
And
okay.
they're nice. They're not scattered with debris, or, you know, there's no outside stuff. It would be better if everything was that you could put inside.
All right, Jerry, I have a question for you. So with this, I mean, this kind of depends on who moves in there as a tenant as far as being a jobs creator in the future. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. So, I mean, one thing we kind of look at with HEDRA property is that, you know, these are kind of purchased with public funds. We like to see maybe a greater good sometimes in the purchase agreements and property sales. I guess that would be one thing that, you know, we would really look for in a HEDRA property is, you know, what can this do? Is there any prediction? I mean, no time frame for the additions and when you'd be able to fulfill kind of the master plan for this?
Sure. My plan would be to do one each year. So that would be 3 years for the third. Spring for the first one, following spring for the second, and it takes about 6 months to build a good facility in the good time of the year, not excluding January, December, you know.
What are tied to a land credit sale? Of course, there's a financial benefit to Jerry to work on that incentive, but if we're talking about real estate development, are there other ways to look at this? I mean, there's always the idea that, you know, you just sell at a fair market value. But would this be the only consideration being in the industrial park, or are there other options for us to consider that are based on, that could flow with his design and his timeline? I'm just trying to, if we talked to Chad about this, the whole, you know, jobs creation concept, and I think we talked through it conceptually that there's anecdotal evidence that small businesses grow out of condo units like that. But without him knowing who he's going to rent to and who they'd be, you don't know if it's a plumber or the owner that likes to hang out in his condo and his RV, you know, and turn it into a man cave, which people could do. That wouldn't create a job, but you know, a trades business that's growing out of a garage into a condo unit, as an example, is, again, we're just hypothesizing, but that would be a job creator. I'm kind of going back to the conversation with Chad and also thinking through, you know, how HEDRA acts on land that we own when we've got an interested buyer. Land credit, fundamentally, is the land credit sale the only option for us to think about in terms of doing a deal with Jerry and the company there? That's my question.
Sure. Commissioner Sinclair, going back to the purpose of land sale and development within the industrial park, we're looking at doing two things. One is increasing the taxable value of the property, and two, job growth. And so we designed the land credit program to provide an incentive for the development by offering a reduction in the land price to do so. That being said, to your question of whether this has to be a land credit or not, it would not need to be. We have established a market price of, I think, $1.54 a square foot for sale of property. Jerry could move forward in offering that for purchase of property, and you could consider that on its own. If there is a land credit or a partial land credit that's applied to this, that's also something to consider. We took a look at what happened with Simply Secure Storage with the building that they built last year, and the one that we just recently approved. That was a partial, in which they did not meet the full credit for reduction of the land price to $1, so there was some cash transferred on that.
And that was the equation based on construction value, right, John? There's a percent credit back against purchase price based on construction value.
Yeah, not on construction value itself, but on the taxable value, the estimated taxable value of the building. And so it's not necessarily how much it costs, but what we assume it to be valued at.
Okay.
And, can I speak yet?
Yes, please do, Jerry.
Not necessarily looking for the credit.
This all hinges on a land for $1 scenario, Jerry? Is that what you're saying? Do we understand?
I'm not, there's two programs, the 10% of the building that goes towards the purchase of the land, and the $1 per acre, I think are two different ones, is that right? But depends upon how many employees you have. I won't qualify it because I only have 2 employees right now, so.
All right, thank you, Jerry. Does anyone on city staff have any additional comments to that end?
I mean, if it's there, I would use it if it works, but if it doesn't, I'm not opposed to just paying the $1.54 per square foot.
I mean, at this point, is this something that may need a little bit more discussion? I mean, with staff at office hours, or is this something that we feel like we can tackle within this resolution with the vote here tonight?
President Piney, what we're looking at here is nothing related to the land credit versus purchase price, but more the use of properties. We have 3 lots available contiguous to one another. From a staff standpoint, we're trying to figure out a way to best utilize sale of the property to preserve future opportunities. And so what we're looking at is any direction that you could provide us relating to between these 3 lots, which one should be offered up to Jerry. And then we would move forward with some of the concept plans, land credit analysis, and those types of things.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Vaughn, I see you raised your pen.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for Jerry coming on today. I'm starting to support if it's a sale of a piece of property. I've seen these properties sit here for a long time, and Custom Asphalt's been in the community for a long time. Let's keep him here. Let's sell him a piece of property if he wants to buy it from us. I don't think it's going to hinder the future. And actually, listen to Jerry. I feel he's going to probably expand his business like he did on the last one. And I get where he's going with that. And we have other property in this industrial park that we can work with other potential developers. I'm supporting staff to move forward. And if they want to work with Mr. Grochon on trying to find a way to do the credit, sure, that's why we're here to do that. But otherwise, if Mr. Grochon wants to buy lot 5 is for sale, in my opinion. I would say buy and please put this on into the community. I think it's a great thing to do. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Sullivan.
Those are my notes exactly. I'll just echo what Mr. Vaughn said.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioners have any questions or comments at this point?
John, do you need a motion for that?
Mr. Vaughn, I do not. I'm looking for direction. It looks like the discussion between Commissioner Vaughn and Sullivan would be to move forward with the sale of Lot 5 with Mr. Grosjean. So unless we hear something to the contrary, we'll proceed in doing that and bring back a formal action for you in the future.
Thank you, John. I guess I would have to reiterate what Commissioners Vaughn and Sullivan had said. We really need to take care of folks that have been here for a while. I feel bad turning them away. So hopefully we can make this advantageous to everybody involved. Thank you, city staff, and thank you, Jerry, for sitting in tonight.
Very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, looking on our agenda, it looks like we are on to item 5, which are reports and information. Item A are the Luke Seward apartments. Do we have any updates from staff this evening?
President Piney, staff continues to work with Mr. Seward on this proposed project. He has provided updated renderings and as well as an updated site plan. He did submit to staff today, actually some newly updated, which of course are not in your packet, but I'm going to share here momentarily with you to review. So there was some changes in the orientation of the building. Same number of units as well as parking spaces and things of that nature. Still a good looking building. Just quickly. Through these. So that would be facing north towards the river. So going through those elevations, and staff continues to work with Mr. Seward on that project. As a reminder, maybe as an update to the new commissioners. So this project would include the sale of staff continues to work with the developer on proposed purchase price of that project, but we wanted to give the HEDRA board here an update on where that project is, as it was included as a site in your downtown property study you adopted earlier this evening, and to just give you a general update on that is progressing. John, anything you'd like to add?
Thanks, Eric. No, I think Eric had covered it pretty well here. We continue to move forward. We provided some background information for Mr. Seward to complete to determine whether a financial subsidy would be warranted on the property. When that's completed, we'll take that to our financial consultants, Northland, to provide an analysis, and then bring that back to HEDRA for some action at that point. So what we're looking at tonight is we have an update here and can certainly answer any questions that you may have, but no action requested tonight.
I guess I have a couple questions, or maybe one question. I like to see the progress on the elevations. Obviously, is wonderful. It's nice to have something to look at. But it seems to me like the real sticking points with this were more financial. I guess, has there been any progress or determination made on that? I guess some sentiment from our prior conversation with Jerry might roll over into this one a little bit. My time before HEDRA Planning Commission, I remember seeing a project similar to this kind of come and go. I remember it getting, a great reception on the commission, and I believe it was approved. But it was kind of one of those things that after a while you just kind of realize, oh, it never happened. we have almost exactly the same scenario where someone has purchased exactly the same building with the intention of buying the additional property from HEDRA. Once again, we have someone before us. I just really want to make sure that, we're doing what we can to make this happen. We've got a lot of infill blocks down there to fill up. And I know that the master plan we got is wonderful, and it paints some pretty broad strokes. But I just want to make sure that we're not counting out anybody that's already knocking on the door, even though that may not be to the scale that these wonderful plans call out. I just want to make sure that this has been given due course. Does anyone else have any comments or questions regarding this project at this time?
And Commissioner Pawnee, I will note that Luke Seward is in the audience tonight. I see that his hand is raised, so if you'd like to hear from Luke, I can bring him in as well.
Yes, please do. Thank you.
Mhm. Okay, Luke, you're in the meeting.
Everyone,
All right, thank you.
thank you for looking at this again. I know I've updated the plans kind of according to what we had discussed last time. We wanted to see some renderings of what it would look like on that corner. The process, of course, of doing that, but my intentions with this meeting was to try to get a proposal across to the board for that lot, because I am trying to move this along efficiently just to get potentially construction started. And as John mentioned, they requested some additional information as far as financials go. And the requested information is, I guess, the uses of the funds and sources of where I'll be getting my financing. At the stage we're at right now, I just don't see that plausible. It's difficult to generate bids and get numbers on a project of this magnitude without having a lot to build it on. Even talking with a financial institution, it's difficult to get too far into financing when there isn't even a lot to essentially build on. The proposal I had in place was more explaining, of course, the benefits to the city initially on a monetary value, what I currently already have into the lot next door. Because if you're looking at the lot as a whole, I just want the board to see what financial investment I already have into the lot and the costs associated with removing the home I have on the lot I own, and then what it would cost to remove the parking lot. So looking at it as one large lot, there's already money invested into that. So that was kind of the proposal I was trying to bring forth today. So I just kind of wanted to touch base in regards to the additional information that was requested, because I don't see it being plausible. So I don't know if that is to a roadblock or not. And I'd be happy to share some of those figures I have with you. And then kind of to Mark's point on Jerry's project, Jerry has been a part of the community for a long time. Seaward Construction has been here, which is my family's company, for a long, long time. So I'd hope that you'd want us to continue to build in the community, and we have plenty of buildings here to see the quality of construction we do. So I would hope we could be able to come to a solution on this, because I'd hate to have to cancel the project due to the not being able to get that lot that's essential to this project. So leave it at that for now and answer any questions.
John, can you clarify for us where we're at on the finances? Because it's not clear to me what's being said right now.
Sure.
I can jump to the conclusion that what I'm hearing is needs land for free in order for the finances to work, or as close to free as possible. Was that the kind of bottom line up front here, or what should we be considering?
Sure, Commissioner Sinclair. Yeah, I'm hearing from Mr. Seward that he's making requests to get the land for $1 or something similar to that. From our standpoint, a subsidy. And in order for us to consider granting a subsidy in the property, we need to provide some sort of justification as to why we should grant that subsidy. And the way that we do that is to provide some sort of financial analysis about the need. And so the information that we requested from Mr. Seward allows us to make that determination. So in order to be stewards of that property and to provide a subsidy to it, we're obligated to have some sort of financial justification for the subsidy. And so that's what we're requesting. Mr. Seward's free to move forward on the property, offer us a market rate on it, move forward with it. I certainly appreciate his position and wanting to see if it could be received from us for a lesser value, but we need to be able to provide that justification.
Staff's next step then is to do that analysis and offer some direction to commission as to what you recommend.
Correct. We would need to have the information from Mr. Seward, then provide the analysis and bring it back to you.
Can I touch on that? So I think too, we have to look at, I think the valuation of the lot is very optimistic. So I don't know, has the consultant that you work with, have they had an appraisal done on the lot? I know the value that I'm coming up or that being presented to me is the county's value of the lot, which on a non or a tax exempt lot, it could essentially be any value. Because if you're comparing it even to the lot that I own, mine's valued at $36,000, and the cost or the price that's been presented to me also includes a lot as value to the lot, which essentially it would need to be removed no matter who purchases it. So it should be deducted from the cost of the lot. So I understand that, you know, looking at it as 60,000, that sounds like a huge subsidy, but in reality, it might not be worth 60,000. So if it comes to where it is only worth 30,000, and then there's costs associated with getting it prepared to build on, removing the parking lot, getting the utilities hooked up again, it might not sound as substantial as the 60,000 that it does right now. And then, so there's that piece of it. And then is it required for requested to be able to move forward, or is alternative option to come up with a solution to terms on that lot without having to go to, you know, providing all that financial information? Because as I mentioned, I just don't see that being plausible.
Okay, at this point, John, can I just verify with you that, I mean, whatever paperwork that's being requested, this is, I mean, systemic and pretty run-of-the-mill for this type of project, these type of financial requests?
Requested from Mr. Seward is information that we've requested for other developments and determining subsidies, and that Northland is used in making that determination in other communities. So ultimately looking for the numbers, looking to see if a subsidy is warranted on the property.
Okay, so now has that request has been formally made, and Luke, you received that information?
Are you talking about the request?
So
Yeah, I
you
just
have
yep.
the request now?
Yeah, I
Okay.
received it prior to the packet being submitted, so of course I didn't have time to into it, but after reevaluating it, I just don't see how it would be plausible. I could provide estimates, but those estimates would be coming from Vermilion Shores 2, which we just built, which construction was now, you know, a year and a half, 2 years ago. It's a completely different style of building. It's a completely different lot. So these estimates might help give us a ballpark, but once I get substantial bids, I could be significantly off. So I don't feel the benefit of just throwing out a number.
All right. Okay, thank you for your information, Luke. I think at this point, we're gonna go back to the commission for some additional discussion. Thank you, though. Yes, Martha.
What, is there some way to compromise between what's being requested and what's available to them short of their not having a lot to build on and coming up with these numbers? I guess I'm confused as to what's essentially needed. Why, yeah, I still remain a little unclear as to why hard numbers are necessary on this if it's going to be kind of an estimate anyway. So maybe you could just.
Yeah, Commissioner Sullivan, we're looking for some numbers that we can evaluate to determine whether a subsidy is warranted. I appreciate Luke's position that, you know, he's not uncertain as to how accurate these numbers could be because there's variables involved in the early on in the project. Can appreciate that. From our standpoint, we need something to evaluate in order to determine whether a subsidy is warranted on the property.
Can I say one more? And I just want to bring up too, the gentleman I purchased the duplex and lot from was an architect out of Edina. And of course, I think Dennis referred to that project being presented 2014 and had some backing from the community. It was going to be 4 duplexes. And through my discussions with him and talking with staff prior to me purchasing the duplex, the agreement forth at that time was to sell the lot for $1 to him, which is where initially I came up with this request. And now looking at the numbers I have into the lot I currently own and what's going to be needed to get it ready for development, it just shows that to get the lot for $1 is essential to this project. And that's kind of why I'm moving forward with that request. So I just want to give a little backstory of the agreement. And granted, that was back in 2014, so I know that's years ago. I just want to point out that was granted to a gentleman out of Edina that was going to project of some sort similar to this on that same lot. And that's why I'm trying to move forward with it as well.
Yeah. And so that's what we're trying to determine as well here is that Mr. Seward has come to the conclusion that the lot is necessary to be had for $1 in order to make the project work. We're looking for the numbers to verify that indeed is the case.
All right, Commissioner Vaughn, I said you had a question.
Yeah, John, can you confirm what Luke is talking about? Isn't that concept drawing that we looked at in 14 was the entire block, if I remember right? It wasn't just that parcel and then the parking lot, but I think going forward, I think my little hang up with this a little bit is I see what staff is doing. They're trying to justify the value of the lot. If Luke would have came to us at the beginning saying, I'm looking at buying this piece of property, buying that other parking lot with it, that's probably the better process. Now I kind of feel like we're in the middle, like, do you want the project or not? Because I need that for $1 or else I'm going to have to leave. I don't know if I don't want to be put in that situation either, that it's all hinging on us giving away for $1 when we don't know what the value of the property is without getting an input on that. My only follow-up, and I think I want to work with him, and I see where Commissioner Sullivan's going with this. Have we looked at any options of defer the payment? Maybe you get the lot for $1 today, but 15 years from now, when the dollars, when they get to the cash flow portion, then they start paying back us what the value of the lot was today. So we know what it is, but we're just deferring the payment, comes back to HEDRA down the line. That's one idea I would say, let's work with them on that, is if we can do that legally. I don't know if we can be deferring payments that far out to get our payment back on what the value of the lot is today.
At this point, I'd like anyone on HEDRA that might have some pertinent professional experience in this. If you have any input at this point, this is the time for it. So please speak up. Bruce.
Yeah, I would just say that it is a 30 unit apartment or whatever amount that it comes out to be is a significant investment and a significant amount of money that is going to improve our tax base going forward. And, you know, I would encourage us to do whatever we can to try and sell that for $1 if we can. And you just need to go through the process to justify why we do that. But it's a huge win-win for the community if we can get that to be built. And if Seawarts are Luke's willing to move forward with it, I think we want to work with them to try and get that done.
All right, thank you, Bruce. Does anyone else have any comments on this or suggestions at this point?
Sounds to me like as tall of an order as it might be, Luke, you know, I think you're going to be tasked with putting some numbers on it. I don't know that anybody's asking you to hold them to them. I don't think there's going to be any scrutiny over whether or not you got it right or not 2 years from now or 3 years from now. It's got to be a financial model that's probably going to be based on a range of construction costs, right? I mean, you're going to have a worst case, best case. Be modeled in a way that John, that you can analyze it. I mean, I'm making the assumption it can be, and with assumptions stated of be a square foot cost. Obviously, I mean that's about the best he could do. He's going to come up with a square foot estimate for the scrape and the removal and utilities and the build, and that's all you can ask for right now, I would assume, right, John?
Looking for numbers. I haven't seen numbers at this point. I have an argument, and it may be a correct argument that I'm not disagreeing with, that the property is justifiably could be sold for $1. I'm just looking for some evidence of that.
Who can you do that with your stated assumptions?
So to get these, I don't know what, I could throw out ballpark numbers of it might cost this or what, but the information that was requested for me was multiple line items all the way down to interest on construction loans. So bids, it's going to cost money on a project of this magnitude. It's not just reaching out to a contractor and asking them to put in hours of work of coming up with numbers. And those are still estimates at that point, especially with how construction costs are changing at a constant. It is still difficult to come up with numbers. And it's hard for me to justify. You need to see what the project costs and what it's going to be at. And if I understand that you want some justification, but my proposal is showing why I think you can present it similar to what Bruce said. There's, the tax thing's one item. The initial building permit costs is another item. And then just the economic impact to the downtown. So to me, to try to put a value on the lot just to see the discrepancy of the cost and the income just doesn't help me. And I don't know if it's because I'm in the real estate industry that you don't put a value on a lot based on those sort of numbers. And like I mentioned prior to, I think the 60,000 is very optimistic just from my experience working in the community the last 9 years. So I think it's going to be difficult to come up with those hard numbers. I could say it's going to cost $1 million, but I could be significantly off. So if you're looking at the number I present and the incomes I'm showing, I know there's not room in that budget to subsidize. Well, now I get real bids and it comes in at 5.6. Well, then that would have been helpful to know, because then at that point you would have been like, yeah, there is room to subsidize because, he's at a loss at this moment. That makes sense, I guess.
All right, thank you, Luke. All right, are you good with the meeting then, Luke? Have you pretty much gotten everything across?
Yeah, I think to an extent. I just want to know what my next step is. So is it essential to provide those financials in order to negotiation, or is it, I don't know how I present this proposal that I came up with?
Okay. I think we're going to remove you from the conversation at this point, and that's something that maybe we'll come up with a determination amongst the board here, discuss with staff, and we'll get back to you. Thank you for your participation tonight.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Great. Do you have any suggestions on how we maybe come forward with this and try and make something work here? Or, John, staff, or city council members also? I think you have unique input here as far as taxpayers and, you know, what their reaction to this type of scenario is. So any input on how to move forward and try and come up with a solution it would be great at this point. Anyone? Yes, Peggy.
John, can you give me just a little bit of background on the process that we're looking at, that Luke was speaking to? Is that something that's done every time? Is it something that the city council looks to, or you know, what is that?
Yeah, the financial analysis that we do for land price justification, I mean, that's something we consistently do on projects to try to come up with a rationale for providing a subsidy on the project. So, I mean, I'm looking for some numbers from him that we can use and make some analysis on, and ultimately the board can make a decision on.
Okay, so we have a time frame for that information to be submitted now? That would be the next step.
As far as I'm concerned, Commissioner Piney, we provided what we need to Luke. It's in Luke's court to provide us the numbers. I appreciate, you know, that there may be questions on that perhaps there may not need to be the detail of the numbers that we had presented to him, but that's something that we could negotiate back and forth with from a staff standpoint. But at this point, I haven't seen anything.
Okay. All right, well, I guess we will have to work with that as it proceeds then. So we're not looking for a motion or anything. This is just a discussion here tonight.
This was just a bit of information tonight. I wasn't expecting to have a larger discussion tonight on this one. What my expectations were, and certainly the commissions may differ on this, is we had an initial meeting in December. We saw the plans. The commission thought the plans were a good fit in the downtown area. There was some issues to resolve relating to what the land price would be, and we need to provide some justification for a subsidy. So we're still at the point of getting those numbers and reporting those back to you.
All right, well, thank you very much, John and Luke, Eric, excuse me. All
John,
right,
John, can I get one more question on this one?
Mhm.
Just so we've got a magnitude, are we talking about, what's the current value of that lot? So what's our delta right now? Is that according to city's analysis, a $60,000 lot, or?
Yeah, it has an appraised value from Dakota County of about 60,000, I believe. Yes.
Okay, because in my mind, we're now basically describing a $60,000 hurdle to get a multi-million-dollar project going. And I just want to make sure that's just my way of thinking about it, but we're at the negotiating table trying to close the gap between 1 and 60,000 to move forward a $1 million project. That sounds like a doable deal, and I want to make sure that I'm on record to say city staff can do to help move that along. There's obviously some exasperation on the part of Seawork Construction, and I don't really fully comprehend that, but if we can help clarify that for them as a city, I think that's time and money well spent to move that project along. I'll leave it at that.
Sure.
Commissioner Sullivan?
I concur with that. Thank you, Mr. Sinclair.
All right, thank you. Does anyone else have any comments moving forward? Thank you, everyone, for an unexpected and lively conversation tonight, but I think this is good. Thank you. All right, we will move on to riverfront lighting.
Yeah, looking at the rest of the agenda, to hear folks, we have some updates and information items. I think in the interest of time, what I'll do is I'll go through some of these things rather quickly. You certainly feel free to jump in with any questions here. So want to thank Eric and for putting together what we have seen down at the riverfront. The council authorized that at the DBA's request. in late December. Lights are up. Great addition to the city right now. So any questions on that, we certainly can answer. From COVID business support, Dakota County approved grants up to $5,000 for businesses. So we're continuing to work with them. As of the 30th of December, 24 out of the possible 31 businesses had applied for the grant funding, and we continue to work with the ones that have not, so that if they want to be eligible, they can. Also had Eric working on the HEDRA project support sign, which was an idea brought forward, I think, by Commissioner Vaughn late last year. So we will have a sign that we can place on projects to provide more advertisement for this organization, which would be good. From a commercial vacancy and development update, not too much on the vacancy side. On the development side, we hit a good milestone with Schoolhouse Square Senior Housing. There was a question of getting low income housing financing for that Dakota County could not do. Where they were going to go to the state for an application, which we worked with the city council to provide some support for. Then found out that there was some other allocations to the state that were directly provided to them. So long story short, that gap has been filled and that project should be moving along in 21, which is great. At the Heritage Ridge project, you can see that under construction as of today. The second phase has been submitted for another 30 lots. So that'll be moving forward through Planning Commission and Council as they move forward in the spring. We are going to be sitting down with Spades next week for an update on that project. We hope to bring Ray Menard forward to the HEDRA meeting in February. And then I did talk to Ebert Development on the property on Highway 61 and Highway 55 where the Caribou Coffee had been slated. As you may note, there's a development sign that's been put up there. Verified with him that he still intends to develop the full site. He's purchased the brown building next to the brown house next to the Dairy Queen, which will be incorporated into the site. Caribou is still on board. What he's looking for is other tenants that might be interested. He wants to master plan the site with other tenants in mind there. So hopefully that'll move forward. And I can stand for any questions that the commission may have.
John, congratulations to you and city staff. The senior housing at Schoolhouse Square has been a pretty big hole in the middle of that project for quite a while. So it's good to see that finally be wrapped up. Thank you very much for your hard work.
Sure.
All right, does anyone else have any comments tonight?
This is the last, real quick, John, and you can send me a message later. I'm still going back on the Seaward one. Did we do the same conclusion that we can compare ourselves to? We did this with Panache, right? Down on lot 1, we asked for their figures and budget of what they would do. So we're doing the same. I just wanted to bring that up as for commission members to understand this is the same thing that we asked for Panache, and look what happened. It didn't go forward because the numbers weren't there. They didn't produce them. If they can't produce it, and if Seawards are having a tough time producing it, then we as a group need to revisit how we help staff justify the values of these land, whatever it is. I'm with the commission. We got to find some way to make this work because I think it's good use, and I like the new layout, how they can maybe make it bigger if we get rid of the red building someday and fill the lot up. I want to work our way there, and I mean, we just approved money for parklet. That's exactly why I voted no. Put that parklet money to this piece of property, and I'm really happy. So I just think we got to find a way to do this, and that's better use of HEDRA dollars, in my opinion, for this. So please, staff, keep working at this. If we can help with the policy side of it to make it easier for future, I'm all in favor of having that conversation. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Does anyone have any additional comments tonight? All right, Commissioner Brox and Horsch, I promise you that meetings are not nearly this long typically, so I hope this doesn't scare you off. Thank you.
Too late.
Seeing no, Martha.
I said it's too late. They're sworn in.
We've had 4-hour council meetings. This isn't that bad.
All right, as long as we've gotten the blood sample, we're good.
We'll move
All
to
right,
adjourn.
Second.
I'll entertain a motion for the evening then.
So Lori and I both
All right, I think we're good. We will go around the, let's see, Commissioner Vaughn,
Yes. Have a good night.
Commissioner Sullivan, Commissioner Brox,
Yes.
Commissioner Sinclair,
Yes.
Commissioner Gorblish,
Yes.
Commissioner
Have a good
Horsch.
Yes.
All right, we are good, everyone. Thank you for a banner evening. We look forward